The story of Medusa is one that has captivated imaginations for centuries. It's a tale that blends beauty with tragedy, vengeance with heartbreak, and a mysterious curse that turned a once beautiful maiden into one of the most feared creatures of Greek mythology. Her story is timeless, echoing through the ages, and today we're going to take a deep look into her life, her transformation, and the legendary power that came with one simple look. Medusa was once an ordinary woman, or perhaps more extraordinary than that given her beauty. In fact, she was regarded as one of the most stunning women in all of Greece. Her beauty was so enchanting that it caught the attention of not just mortal men but even the gods themselves. Her hair was long, golden, and flowed like a river of sunlight. Her eyes were deep and mesmerizing, capable of captivating anyone who looked into them. She was a priestess of Athena, dedicated to the goddess of wisdom and war. Athena's temple was her sanctuary, and she had taken a vow of chastity, remaining pure in devotion to the goddess. But as with many myths, beauty has a dark side, and Medusa's beauty would soon become both her gift and her curse. The most powerful of all gods, Poseidon, lord of the seas, took one look at Medusa and was struck with desire. He was known for his impetuous nature and lack of control when it came to his own desires. Medusa, unfortunately, became the object of his affection. Poseidon's feelings for Medusa were intense, and like many of the gods in Greek mythology, he was not used to hearing no. He pursued Medusa relentlessly, and despite her dedication to Athena and her vow of chastity, Poseidon's lust was unrelenting. One day Poseidon found his way into Athena's temple, and it was there that he took Medusa by force. In some versions of the myth, Medusa was said to have resisted, but the outcome was always the same. Poseidon's assault on her took place within the sacred halls of Athena's temple. Athena, the very goddess Medusa had sworn her life to, was not pleased. In fact, she was furious. Not at Poseidon, though, for as a god, Poseidon was beyond reproach. Athena's wrath was focused solely on Medusa. Athena's anger was so great that she cursed Medusa. The once beautiful woman was transformed into a terrifying monster. Her beautiful golden hair turned into writhing snakes, each one slithering in every direction. Her eyes, once deep and alluring, became a dangerous weapon. Anyone who looked directly into her gaze would be turned to stone. The curse Athena placed upon Medusa was both a punishment and a form of protection. Medusa could no longer be touched by anyone, for her power was now both a shield and a prison. She was left to live alone on a remote island, surrounded by the monsters and serpents that now comprised her very being. Medusa's transformation into a monster was not just physical, it was emotional too. The once priestess of Athena, who had been revered for her beauty, was now a figure of fear. Her beauty, once her greatest asset, was now the source of her isolation. She no longer had the life she once dreamed of. Her days were spent in solitude, hiding from the world, cursed to be a monster with no escape from her own reflection. As time passed, Medusa's bitterness grew. She wasn't the only victim in this tragic tale. Poseidon, the one who had set everything in motion, suffered no consequences for his actions. Athena, the goddess who had cursed her, did so without any thought of the emotional toll it would take. Medusa was forced to live in the shadows, a creature of myth, feared and misunderstood. But even Medusa's curse could not completely break her spirit. In fact, it made her stronger, fiercer, and more resilient. She had no choice but to become something far more powerful than anyone had ever imagined. Her once beautiful gaze became a weapon that could turn anything into stone. She no longer needed to run or hide. She was no longer the prey, but the predator. The curse, while a symbol of pain and loss, had also made Medusa a force to be reckoned with. And yet, even with her newfound power, Medusa was still a prisoner of her curse. She lived in isolation, away from human contact, avoiding the gaze of anyone who might cross her path. She lived for centuries in this state, not seeking vengeance, but merely existing, the object of fear and fascination. The story of Medusa does not end in isolation, however. Like many Greek myths, there is always a hero. Perseus, the son of Zeus, came into the story as the hero tasked with slaying Medusa. But the quest to kill Medusa was no simple feat. Perseus, armed with the gifts of the gods, Athena's shield, Hermes' winged sandals, and Hades' helmet of invisibility, set out to find Medusa and end her reign of terror. Perseus was not immune to the dangers of Medusa's gaze, but he was given a magical shield from Athena, polished to a mirror-like sheen that allowed him to view Medusa's reflection without directly looking at her. Using the shield as a mirror, Perseus carefully approached Medusa's lair. It was during this encounter that Medusa's tragic fate was sealed. Perseus, using his shield to avoid looking directly at her, managed to cut off Medusa's head. But even in death, Medusa's power did not die with her. And from her severed neck sprang forth the creature Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant, who would go on to play a part in other myths. Medusa's head, though severed, retained its petrifying power. Perseus used it as a weapon in his later adventures, turning foes to stone with a single glance. The tale of Medusa is one that brings up many complex emotions. It's a story of transformation, but also of victimization. Medusa was punished for a crime she did not commit. Her beauty, once a gift, became her greatest curse, and she was condemned to live a life of loneliness and fear. The gods in Greek mythology were known for their cruelty, and Athena's actions, while understandable from a divine perspective, left Medusa in a tragic and unfair position. But there is more to Medusa's story than just victimhood. There is also the theme of strength and power. Despite her tragic fate, Medusa did not simply give up. She embraced her curse and used it as a means of protection and empowerment. She became a creature of legend, feared by all who knew her name. Medusa may have been cursed, but she was not weak. She wielded her newfound power with precision and grace, and in the end, it was her strength that made her one of the most memorable figures in mythology. At the same time, there is a strong undercurrent of sympathy for Medusa in modern retellings of her story. Over time, many have seen her not as a villain, but as a tragic hero in her own right. She was punished by the gods, cast aside, and forced to live a life of isolation and fear. And yet, in the end, it was Medusa's curse that made her stronger, that turned her into something no one could control or destroy. Today, Medusa is not just a symbol of fear, but of empowerment. Her story has evolved, and she is now seen by many as a representation of resilience and survival. She was not just a victim of Poseidon's desire or Athena's wrath. She was a woman who turned her curse into strength. Her gaze, once feared, is now a symbol of strength and power, a reminder that even the most tragic circumstances can be overcome, or at the very least used to one's advantage. The legend of Medusa is a timeless one, a tale that continues to be told and retold, with each new generation finding its own interpretation of her story. Whether she is seen as a tragic victim, a fearsome monster, or a symbol of empowerment, Medusa remains a powerful figure in mythology. Her story speaks to the complexities of beauty, power, and transformation, reminding us that even the most tragic figures can become legends in their own right. As for Medusa's final fate, it remains as mysterious as the woman herself. Some believe that she has been forever silenced, her head used only as a weapon in the hands of those who can control it. Others believe that Medusa's legacy lives on not in her curse, but in the lessons we can learn from her story. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: Medusa's story is far from over. It continues to live on in the whispers of ancient myths and in the minds of those who find strength in her story.